Hello my friends, how are you? Sean Ferrick here for Trek Culture. We are going to bring you a very different types of ups and downs this time around, because this is not the latest episode of whichever series is on at the moment. This is not running through, now this is crucial, this is not running through the plot points of the piece we're about to go through. What is this project we are looking at? Well, I am delighted to say that we are looking at all of the ups and downs for Star Trek The Motion Picture, the Director's Edition 4K Remastered. That's a bit of a mouthful. Before I go on, please make sure that you like, share and subscribe. This is technically a retro ups and downs, technically a brand new ups and downs. If you want to see more retro ups and downs, you gotta let us know in those comments. You gotta let us know which ones that you want. Don't forget to check out our ups and downs for Sub Rosa as well. Now, without much further ado, let's get straight into it, because there's a fair bit to discuss. Star Trek The Motion Picture has had a fair amount of discussion and journey since it was released in 1979. Now, in our, humbly I'm going to say this, pretty good 20 things you didn't know about Star Trek The Motion Picture, we covered an awful lot of the behind the scenes things that went on while putting this film together. Look, it's a journey. There'll be a link to the description to this video. Check that out. What I want to talk about first, my first up for this list from the 2022 version. This film is gorgeous. In 2022, we were finally able to see what they wanted to do in 1979, but didn't have the technology or the time. If you look at just how clean and crisp the picture is here, there are scenes like Admiral Kirk's arrival at Starfleet headquarters, for one. There is the reveal of V'ger for another one, which I'll discuss now in a second, and also just the sheer number of shots of the Enterprise itself cleaned up and shown as it should be shown. There are shots on Vulcan, like for example when Spock is undergoing the Kolinar, and that entire skyline is completely different. As was pointed out several times since the release of this, it never made sense for Spock originally to be shielding his eyes during the night. This has finally updated the scene to take place during the day as it was meant to. Little things like that. Now I'll talk about some of the additions in an up now in a second. I cannot overstate just how beautiful this film is. It is one of its core strengths. So our first up is that it's unavoidable how stunning the 4K Director's Edition is. The second up, now although we can't play the music here for you, close your eyes and imagine you're floating through a starfield. All you can hear around you is the gorgeous notes of Ilea's theme. It's washing over you because you're being treated to one of the last film overtures of the big movie era. That's right, now a Disney film did follow that, but Jerry Goldsmith was able to treat audiences in 1979 to the Ilea's theme overture before the Paramount logo even comes up. Now that is kept for this version, and I think it is dialed up to 11. In fact, the soundtrack overall of Star Trek The Motion Picture is one of the greatest beneficiaries of this remaster, because the score is ever so slightly remixed, but just to bring it into a much clearer way. Now, I've been listening to the soundtrack of the Director's Edition since Robert Wise's Director's Cut was released in 2001. I don't think this is any mystery to anyone who knows me. Star Trek The Motion Picture, in my opinion, has the single greatest soundtrack to any of the films. And that has been lovingly remixed and given back to us. Now you can finally, it's more widely available, for example, than the 2001 version was, and I implore that you go and listen to it, because the way it interacts with the picture on screen, it is as crisp as you're ever going to get it. Let's talk about, for example, the scene of the Enterprise leaving dry dock. Now that is purely for the ship porn enthusiasts of us all. I have a canvas of that on my wall in my living room. Okay, that's how much I love this scene. It's not just a visual treat, which of course it is, but what we get is one of the first great statements of the Enterprise theme. We did hear it in the opening credits. That was the kind of the bombastic version that we're all very used to now, the Star Trek March. This, the Enterprise theme, it's the same thematic music, presented differently, lovingly. We are talking full romance in the strings. Now you're going, oh, Sean, this is nice and all, but I heard this in 1979. Yes, you did. And there's a funny story about the version we almost heard. This has been scrubbed completely clean. This is, you are lost in the music as you are with Admiral Kirk and Scotty in that shuttle pod. This, I will say, is one of the reasons where, with the greatest of respect to all laptop manufacturers out there, don't watch this through your headphones on a laptop. This is to be seen on as big a canvas as possible with as nice a sound system as possible. I could say that that's almost a drawback, is that you need to have the technology to really experience this. But my God, what an experience this is. The music throughout the whole thing, particularly then the inclusion of the blaster beam, which we've spoken about in previous lists. This was an instrument invented by Jerry Goldsmith for Star Trek the Motion Picture that would be lovingly reused in Star Wars Attack of the Clones with those compression bombs. It's just, you feel it all the way down to your toes. And this is finally presented in the way it was meant to be heard, as clear as if you are sitting in front of the orchestra yourself. One of the issues with the film as released in 1979 is that, quite frankly, it wasn't finished. So what we got in the theaters was as close to a finished product as the team could put together in time for release day. Now look, I think they did pretty good. 2001 rolls along, and the director's edition, which is what this remaster is based on, I must say, the director's edition comes along and effectively finishes the film's runtime. 2 hours and 20 it's a daunting runtime, I won't lie, but it finishes the way it was meant to be cut for the cinema. Fast forward to 2022. Things that had been missed along the way for various reasons. Color grading. Editors out there will know that color grading is a laborious process that takes time, and certainly for a major motion picture should be done in slightly longer than 4 days, which is what it took to do the 1979 version. I mean, it wasn't finished. It wasn't remotely finished. And that's not a criticism against the editors of the time. They just didn't have what they needed. Now, we have a change in how we actually view the film. So the up is that, particularly for the color grading itself, we have warmer tones. We have more of a contrast between flesh tones, the uniforms, and the actual backgrounds behind them. You would find in, let's say, the 2001 version, that there's an awful lot of dull kind of blending going on in a lot of the scenes, because you had these beige and tan uniforms that were blending. Think of the rec deck, you know, always kind of blending in against each other. You know, you had Kirk wearing white. Sure, that stands out a little bit more, but everyone else is like pale blue, tan, things like that. And it wasn't exactly an amazing decision when they were making the film, let alone when it got to the editing stages. And of course, the uniforms would change to the Monster Maroons in Wrath of Khan. It doesn't look as bad now, because they were able to separate these colors the way that they were meant to. And I think that's one of the main benefits of this remaster, is just how crisp and separate everything looks. You can tell that there's no blending, there's no bleed of colors going on. When I say this is eagle eye stuff, it's because it was so bleh to see in the original that it really goes, oh my, in this version. You don't even realize you're looking for it before it's like, oh Lord. And I know this, technically this up would possibly fall under the first up. It's gorgeous. It is. I'm just being really fancy. And, you know, shout out to the editors out there. I see you. I see the effort you're putting in. Another up is some slight additions that have been made to this version. Rewind till 2001, and we finally got, which remember we didn't have in 1979, we got V'ger. Now the full reveal of this spacecraft was only released in 2001 in the director's edition. Now, we got glimpses of it in 1979, but never a full reveal. Now in 2022, some slight CGI was able to be added to the ship to really give it more of a depth, give it more size, and give it more because I'm struggling for words. That is one of the main beautiful additions to V'ger as a whole in 2022. We recently did an interview with Doug Drexler, who actually worked on the 2001 Director's Edition. He said that the 2022 4K remaster, this is the finished version of Starting the Motion Picture. This is the way it's meant to be seen. This is the way V'ger is meant to be revealed. This is the way it's meant to be experienced.
I thought it's the first time I've ever watched it and felt like it was finished. I had always been confused by the shots in V'ger, which are too long anyway, still too long. The shots of it coming out of the cloud where you could see it, or they had the weapons firing down underneath it, heading to Earth. I mean, it's like for the first time, I understood what was going on. There were like shots missing, you know, and they had that problem I was at the world premiere in Washington, D.C. when it first opened. And
the actual premiere.
I was at the actual premiere.
Oh,
Jerry Goldsmith sat behind me.
What?
I'm like, how the hell did I get a better seat than Jerry? And ironically, his wife coughed through the whole movie. I think it was his wife. The rumor was that the print was practically still wet, that Robert Wise hand carried it, and that they usually spend like 3 months color balancing, and I think they did it in like a couple of days. There was a shot in the version that was released to television with Kirk coming down on a spacesuit where the ceiling is the stage. It's not the ship, it's the wooden ceiling of the soundstage. It's the best the movie's ever been, no doubt.
There was other little smart additions as well. For example, if you think of the scene when Kirk and Scotty are leaving that orbital dry dock to go to see the Enterprise, we see Kirk beams up after having a nice reveal of the model that would go on to be Regular One. It's just technically Regular One is the upside down one. But anyway, he beams up, they talk, and they walk into a shuttle. Now, in the 1979 and the 2001 editions, that shuttle magically appeared because it hadn't been there in the wide shot. That's been added in to the 2022 edition. That is a tiny little change that technically, look, it didn't need to be added, but it adds just a little bit to that scene without any kind of big fanfare or anything like that. The addition as well of something slightly larger to the leaving dry dock scene is Earth. Yeah, do you remember that little planet that we're all on and desperately trying to kill as much as we possibly can? Yes, it's been added into the 2022 version because when the Enterprise is leaving dry dock, of course, there's those gorgeous shots of it, kind of pulling out, and where'd the planet go? Now we see the planet in the pan of the first reveal of the new Enterprise. That's been there, yeah. But as it's leaving dry dock, suddenly it was like, all right, what do you do? Move the thing? So it's back in. Little additions like that. Much later on in the film, there is a new explosion of the asteroid that gets pulled into the wormhole with the Enterprise as it's gone to warp. There is oh my god, the reveal of the Vulcan warp sled. Good soup. But then later on as well, inside V'ger, when Ilea Decker, McCoy, Kirk and Spock are going to see what will end up being the Voyager 6 probe, that entire scene, there's new CGI added to, particularly to the walkway, which is, of course, Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland. Of course, that's what it is. That is so crisp, so stunning, and also it really adds to the sense of scale. Because one thing I always thought was missing in earlier versions was that it was, okay, clearly there was matte paintings going on, that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that, but it did look like the scale is totally off in those versions. Not so anymore. It does look like they're coming out of a starship at this point. Now, these were added in the 2001 edition is the bolts that V'ger fires out of itself. These are cleaned up and tidied for this version. Last but not least, just beside the Golden Gate Bridge in the 2022 edition, Starfleet headquarters is actually added. Fairly large missing piece of kit in both 1979 and 2001. If you were sitting here going like, John, it is called Ups and Downs. You do remember that, right? I will say, how dare you speak to me like that? You see me in my office after class. We come to the down. Anyone who goes in to the Director's Edition remaster of Star Trek the Motion Picture thinking, finally, we're going to have an exciting, action-packed film, is going to leave disappointed. The film is dull. And I hate saying that because it sounds so judgy and it sounds like I'm just like, listen, after all that effort, who gives a crap? No, it's a good film. It's not exciting. Or at least in a traditional sense, it's not exciting. A lot of people will look at Star Trek The Wrath of Khan and then go, that's where the Star Trek film universe really began. And to an extent, I see their point. Because that's where, think about, we still talk about Spock, Khan, we still talk about the Battle in the Mutara Nebula, but 40 years later. Star Trek the Motion Picture gave us the refit Enterprise, gave us things like V'Ger, brought Spock back to Star Trek, gave us McCoy with the medallion, but primarily Star Trek the Motion Picture gave us a gorgeous palette for the eyes, which was very nice in 1979, it was really nice in 2001, and my God, it's gorgeous in 2022, but it was not Star Wars. In fact, it was the antithesis to that action opera in space. You had A New Hope came along and literally blasted its way into everyone's hearts. Star Trek came along and said, sit down there now and I'll put my arm around you and we'll have an old wander through the cosmos. That was the point of the film. And I think it achieves that very, very well. But it's going to test your bum. This was never a film about crash, bang, wallop. That was not what Star Trek the Motion Picture was about. This was about the grandeur of exploring the cosmos. And it nails that. So this down, which I do stand by, it's dull. It was never meant to be anything else. Or at least if it was meant to be something, okay, if it was meant to be something else, then I'm sorry lads, But no, it was meant to be an experience, which is something that it is. It reminds you very much of 2001 A Space Odyssey, which was quite a bit closer to the release of this film than we tend to think now. I mean, that whole sequence with the Stargate at the end, that is very much replicated in Traveling Through the Cloud with V'Ger. Now, of course, I have no way to prove this, but apparently the stories are, particularly with 2001, is that people would take a lot of substances, a little bit of LDS, go and watch the Stargate. It was one of the reasons the film did so well. I could very much imagine people doing the same with the V'Ger cloud. This seems like the perfect thing for like a planetarium. That's kind of what this film is about. It's about taking all of your senses, drinking it all in. Your heart rate's probably not going to go up very high. That is fine. I'm not here to yuck your yum. I'm not here to kind of talk down people's enjoyment of it. I thoroughly enjoy this film. Star Trek, the one with the whales, it is not. And that's fine. Final review of Star Trek the Motion Picture 4K remaster. Listen, Doug Drexler worked on the 2001 film, and he said, this is how Star Trek is meant to be seen. And I get that. This is as gorgeous as the film has ever looked. We are now blessed with the CGI effects that we've seen in Discovery, Picard, Strange New Worlds. I mean, we can do an awful lot with computers now, and those are lovingly reinserted and rejigged with Star Trek the Motion Picture. It's about as beautiful a Star Trek film as you're ever going to see. The pacing, same problems in 1979 as we have in 2022. It's not an exciting film, or traditionally exciting, I should say. If you put that aside, if you know that you are not going in for the biggest space battles in the world, that you're not going in for explosions and deaths and, passionate speeches, if you know that you're going in for an exploration of existentialism, then this is an incredible film. This is beautiful. My sincere thanks to David C. Fine and his team that lovingly restored this film. If you ever get a chance to see it in a theater, do it. Do it. Get that up on the screen, get that sound system. But if you're going to see it at home, then if you're stateside at the moment, you can catch it on Paramount Plus. Paramount Plus will be launching in the UK and other territories, June 22nd. Do watch this film. If it's only once, do make sure you watch it. It is as it's meant to be seen, and I am delighted that we have this version. That is everything. What did you think of Star Trek the Motion Picture, the 4K remaster, if you saw it? Let us know in the comments below. Do you think it is the most beautiful Star Trek film of them all? Do you think, listen, it's as dull as dishwater? let me know. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to check back over those videos I mentioned. We've got our 20 things you didn't know about starting the motion picture, parts 1 and 2. Don't forget our retro ups and downs for Sub Rosa as well. All of those available on our channel. You are all awesome. Please live long and prosper. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. Take time to look after yourself. Recharge and recrystallize your own dilithium crystals. To our friends in Ukraine, we are thinking of you as ever. Please be safe. All of our love. Everyone, have a good one. Make it so.